Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Tonight I wanted to talk to you about the latest terrorism coming from the genocide forces inside of Gaza, primarily with the Kamal Adwan hospital, but with additional massacres all across Gaza Strip. And I also wanted to talk to you about the massive explosions inside of Israel following the Ansarullah attack. Well, they carried out multiple attacks in the past several weeks, but in the past 2 days, they had significant landings in central Israel, and the attacks coming from the genocide cartel against Yemen. I'm going to start off with Gaza. In Gaza, the terrorists, the genocide soldiers, and their genocide army, every single day they're showing the whole world the levels of barbarism and depravity that they reached. Unprecedented levels of depravity and barbarism from these grand master terrorists. They're targeting Kamal Adwan Hospital day after day. Kamal Adwan Hospital is the only hospital in the north of Gaza that is not even can't call it a functioning hospital. Doesn't have anything. Doesn't have food, doesn't have medication. Israel targets the hospital every single day. Snipers, shells. They commit massacres surrounding the hospitals against families seeking refuge. And the hospital receives bodies of children and women and innocent people, sometimes burnt without the means to treat them, because Israel is preventing any sort of medication, any treatment equipment, any food even, of getting into the hospital. But they're not only finding it, entertaining enough for them, because the Israeli genocide soldiers, they're sadistics. So their sadism goes beyond any comprehension. They target people for fun. And I shared with you the recent article from Haaretz about the soldiers shooting and laughing, killing hundreds of people for fun, and knowing that they are innocent civilians. So they're just killing people for fun. Now Kamal Adwan, they're targeting the hospital again, this time with direct shelling on the hospital itself, and they know which units are still functional, or they have something going on. For example, ITU or even neonatal departments inside the hospital. Again, they target them deliberately. Snipers sitting there shooting at staff to a level where the hospital manager, Kamal, what's his name? Sorry, Abu Safiya, right? Hussam Abu Safiya, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, he said that they had to gather in one location only, because the genocide army is targeting them, asking them to evacuate immediately, and hitting them from all sides. And again, they're still receiving patients who are suffering from a genocide, and Israel doesn't want them to even have the ability to treat them. And this man, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, he lost his son. Israel killed his son just over a month ago, just to prove a point and to apply pressure on him. Yet he refused to get out of the hospital, and he insisted on remaining there to treat people. He has been communicating, he has been calling on the international community and every organization, every country, to stop this mass terror, to stop these psychopathic, depraved Israeli terrorists committing these crimes against humanity. The ICJ already called them a genocidal entity. The ICC already has arrest warrants against the head of the state and his ex-genocide minister, yet they're being enabled, and no one is listening to him, to a level where the other day a crew from the World Health Organization came to Kamal Adwan Hospital to monitor, because many people dispute what's happening in Gaza. Therefore, the WHO go out and confirm everything that they're talking about, like the death toll as confirmed by the health ministry of Gaza is very accurate. The situation is exactly as they're reporting it from Gaza. The reporters who are being martyred in Gaza, Israel killed over 192 journalists inside of Gaza. Again, it's as if it's nothing. The other day, Israel targeted the hospital when the crew was there. It's as if they don't even want the reality of what's happening to come out, because the World Health Organization, one of the biggest organizations concerning health globally, and they are still active inside of Gaza, and they insist on going to every single location despite grave risk. There's a massive risk against these people. Israel kills World Health Organization staff. They killed the aid workers from many countries abroad, American, British, European, multinational. They kill them. And again, no uproar from the genocide supporting countries. So Israel even targets them when they go to Kamal Adwan hospital. And again, no, you don't hear that on the headlines. Kamal Adwan, how long have we been speaking about Kamal Adwan? 70 days of a siege on a hospital by these barbaric, depraved, sick, sadistic psychopaths of Israel, committing it and having fun and laughing, and being enabled by their state, by, well, everyone in the army. They enable all of that. If there's any internal scrutiny, it's immediately shut down. And no one is stopping them. No country stopping them. Their allies are still supporting them, ignoring the fact that there's an infanticide and a genocide and mass destruction and disaster in Gaza, and acting like nothing is happening simply because they don't talk about it. Well, no, it is happening. The worst crimes on earth are happening. And Kamal Adwan will forever be an example of what Israel has done and who supported Israel, and will forever be a stamp of shame on the people who committed this, the people who supported this, and their set of morals that they try and preach to the world. It's a stamp of shame on them. It's a condemnation forever that they will not be able to recover from. What's happening in Gaza now, and the fact that it's still being enabled, is something obnoxious, and it needs to be stopped immediately. No amount of words or coverage is enough to describe what's happening, but the least we can do is say what's happening. Well, hospitals, ICU units, ITU, neonatal, infants not being able to treat it, bodies piled up, hospital staff being killed, no food, no water, hardly anything. So, I mean, if you wanted to create a horror story, you wouldn't be able to come up with what these depraved Israeli terrorists are doing inside of Gaza. And it's very important to highlight this and keep talking about it, because that's something that must end immediately. No one should get used to what's happening, and no one should think that, oh yeah, no. People need to continue to call for this to stop with immediate effect. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about, the resistance is still active. Why is there resistance? It's because there's a cancerous tumor called Zionism that is enforcing itself through terrorism, backed by the United States and other depraved governments globally, against the Palestinian people and the people of the region. The resistance exists because this neo-colonialist supremacist entity is still committing mass terror against innocent civilians. And one of the main contributors to the resistance against this genocidal entity is Yemen, is Ansarullah. Ansarullah have been attacking this genocide entity, this occupying illegal genocide entity, ever since Al-Aqsa flood began and the Israeli genocide began in Gaza. They have never stopped. We had periods where there was a reduction for 1 or 2 days, but they continuously targeted Israel. And then in the past couple of days, they started to land more of their missiles inside of Israel, in central Israel. And their accuracy and the fact that they are going through, so passing the Israeli air defense systems, in particular Arrow 3, that is generally used against these missiles, is very telling. They're saying that they have developed technology to go through these systems. But the fact that they're hypersonic missiles almost automatically means that they will pass Arrow 3. Well, because Arrow 3 has a speed limit of, I think, Mach 5 or 6. Whereas their hypersonic missiles of Yemen, they reach up to Mach 13. Similar with the Iranian case. So these missiles landed. Arrow 3 failed. And although Israel tries to sometimes use other systems to counter these missiles, such as the THAAD or the Iron Dome, they also fail miserably. Now, several missiles landed yesterday in the genocide. A couple of them with you.
You partner. You partner.
And there was another one, and I'll give you a couple of more videos with more details. So direct landings coming from Ansarullah. And in one video, there was the interception attempt coming from Israel and how it failed. In particular, this video here. You can see the two Arrow 3 missiles going. And the missile comes, passes both of them, and lands. And these landings are in central Israel, in occupied Haifa. Now, Israel is admitting that they do not have an answer for this. As a matter of fact, there were several articles inside of Israel. This was one of them here. This is not how you build a wall. The Houthis make a school for Israel every time. So basically schooling Israel. The Houthis or Ansarullah, they're schooling Israel with their attacks, and Israel isn't able to defend itself from Ansarullah. Why is that? It's primarily because they're using hypersonic missiles similar to ones that Iran used against Israel, where Israel is completely exposed. There is no defense system that is able to counter these missiles. Israel tries to counter them with their fighter jets, with their most advanced air defense systems. They cannot. The United States positioned the THAAD. That THAAD will not work because the THAAD is inferior to Arrow 3, for example. And the Arrow 3 itself, we saw the missiles of the Arrow 3. That was $6 million for you. One missile costs at least $3 million. They're unable to intercept them. So what's next? What happens next? Israel's genocide allies, they step in. Who steps in? The United States, thinking that they can do something that Israel doesn't. So the Central Command, they released this, they had this press release today. Airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi missile storage command and control facilities in Yemen. They had multiple attacks. And they said the Central Command did not specify if it was only the United States forces or if the British Royal Air Force participated too, because both of them previously had attacks against Yemen. But now they're targeting Yemen again. What are they going to do exactly? Well, Israel carried out a strike the other day on strategic locations too, infrastructure, civilian infrastructure. Again, all of it illegal warfare, by the way. All of what Israel and its genocide allies do is illegal warfare. In international law, civilian infrastructure should be avoided. That's something that the United States administration and their little genocidal puppet, they never play by the book. They always target the civilian infrastructure to try and achieve their objectives by terrorism. That's the actual definition of terrorism. So when someone talks about terrorism, that is terrorism. The United States, that's terrorism. Israel, that is terrorism. That is state terrorism at a mass scale, at a mass level. What is the United States thinking that they can do? What are they thinking they can do with Yemen? These people, yesterday, I spoke about one of their political figures, Mohammed al-Bukhaiti, saying that we don't fear these people. We fear God if we don't respond, because this is an obligation for us to respond and protect the people of Palestine, and we will not stop up until the genocide ends in Gaza and the siege is lifted. How are you going to take any action against these people that will intimidate them? There is no action that can be taken against them. These people, firstly, they've just gone out of a war that took so many lives. Again, that was backed by the United States, well, through Saudi Arabia against them. And even though they were war-torn and they suffered so much, they decided to help Gaza. Despite all of the problems internally when it comes to Yemen, when it comes to poverty, where it was a war-torn country, just getting out of it. In 2023, China just brokered the deal, in addition to Oman, between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which led to further de-escalation between Ansarullah and Saudi Arabia, in effect Yemen and Saudi Arabia, because it included them in the process. Yet, despite all of that, they're not thinking about anything. They're not thinking, oh, if I do something, my financial interests will be it. Oh, if I do something, then the US might target a power grid or our oil refineries or what. They don't think like that. They think of what they need to do from a moral standing, from a human rights perspective. Simple, straightforward. If we want to talk about supporters of human rights, the champions of human rights, it's these people who stand up against the worst and most depraved things on earth, the genocide entity and its backers, committing a genocide against the Palestinian people. Simple. No complications, not too much babbling, not too much talking. They simply participate against a criminal terrorist entity backed by a greater criminal terrorist entity. And they're effective. The Eilat port is shut completely. They choked Israel economically. Eilat port is bankrupt completely. No trade. More countries are hesitating in having any sort of trade with Israel. The economy is collapsing internally. Their military has been humiliated. It's sending a message to every Israeli sitting there in this genocide entity that there will be no peace for you, and your country cannot protect you so long as your country is committing a genocide, the worst genocide in the 21st century, against innocent civilians, butchering people and chopping heads and pieces off of people and letting dogs eat their bodies and shooting every single emergency vehicle trying to go and even take the bodies of the people in the streets. Dogs are eating bodies in Gaza, in North Gaza and near the Netzarim line, because these depraved maniacs are shooting them for fun and shooting everyone trying to rescue them. Ambulances shot, fired, then hospitals, shelling on the hospital, sniping, targeting the staff, targeting the medical staff. Who's standing up against them? Well, of course, the Palestinian resistance is constantly there in Gaza. In the past couple of days, they have been putting the genocide soldiers' heads in the sand, in the mud. targeting multiple gatherings, targeting some of these terrorists left, right, and center, direct shootings, whether in their troop carrier or just walking anywhere. Wherever they see them, they target them. And outside now, the main active area, of course, we had the ceasefire with Hezbollah that took away the active front and pressure against Israel. And now it's Ansarullah in Yemen. And they're effective. Now, Israel's having a problem with that. And they're admitting that we don't have an answer. Therefore, the genocide coalition, they step in, try and take the pressure. So instead of them going and attacking Israel and disabling this entity completely and taking down the heads of terror, they go and attack Ansarullah, thinking that they can somehow change something. That you will not change anything with these people. These people of Yemen who are bravely standing up against the genocide, they are not intimidated by Israel. They're not intimidated by the genocide coalition. They're not intimidated by any of you. These people genuinely act out of morals and principles and do what they indeed believe is right. Human rights. They're supporting the greatest case of human rights that we have in front of us now in Gaza that is testing the whole world. It's a moral compass. Show me your position when it comes to Gaza. I'll tell you who you are and whether you're on the right side of history or not. And these people in Yemen are proving time after time that they will continue. And now they had another declaration today that Ansarullah, we will have another escalation. So far we're in phase 5, by the way. They've had 5 phases of escalation. Phase 5 started to introduce more diversified attacks against the genocide entity and the genocide cartel, as in the coalition. They said we will be escalating now. What do they mean by escalating? Well, so far, if they have been targeting primarily strategic and military locations inside of Israel, well, they've also targeted some economic interests as well. They will start targeting infrastructure too. Ansarullah, they have the capacity to land these missiles on Israel's main power grids, for example. Just south of Haifa, Israel has one main power grid. If they start targeting strategic infrastructure inside of Israel, they will start applying more pressure on them. Now, some of the participants in the resistance front have been criticized previously of not targeting these locations from the beginning. And that was due to many reasons, by the way. It's because usually when you target infrastructure, and we're talking about outside Gaza, because unfortunately no one stopped what's happening in Gaza. Not Iran, not Hezbollah, no one. The only thing they have done is they have applied pressure on the genocide state to take some of that pressure off what's happening in Gaza. But it did not stop what's happening in Gaza. They only did the moral thing when it comes to taking steps, taking concrete action against the country committing genocide to exhaust some of its military pressure off the innocent people inside of Gaza and trying to use that as leverage. But it hasn't stopped what's happening in Gaza. But when it comes to outside of Gaza, the equation is if these countries target some of the key infrastructure inside of Israel, then their key infrastructure will be targeted. And if we take the example of Lebanon, Israel hasn't targeted the electricity of Lebanon or the main energy or the airport, right? But they could have. That's if Hezbollah attacked those locations inside of Israel. And Israel did not do that in Lebanon because they knew it would be mutual destruction. These things are to be taken into consideration when it comes to these attacks on strategic locations. But Yemen, from a Yemeni perspective now, well, now that they're escalating more, the genocide coalition and Israel, they would be leaving Yemen with no other option but to increase these attacks. Israel wants to portray an image of victory now. They want to say that, look, we stopped Hezbollah, we will stop Hamas, right? I don't know how that's going to work. And we're invading Syria. And now Yemen needs to shut down, basically. However, that's going to prove to be very difficult for them because Yemen's not going to stop until the genocide stops and the siege is lifted. These are the prerequisites of Yemen to stop attacking Israel. Furthermore, you have a pending response from Iran. No one should think that the Iranian response has been cancelled or something. The Iranian response hasn't been cancelled. When it comes to Iran, Iran is still, from a political perspective, waiting for certain steps to be implemented when it comes to the ceasefire. This is what most likely they're doing. Because from their side, they haven't attacked yet. They have given time for a ceasefire to take place. We're seeing it happening in Lebanon, as fragile as it is. They're waiting to see if it might happen in Gaza. Then they can have a certain attack on Israel. How intense will it be? It would depend on the behavior of Israel, as the Iranian president stated before. If they stop murdering children, we will consider the intensity of our response. However, seeing as, well, there's still no ceasefire from Gaza, and there is an escalation with Yemen, no one should undermine that. All of these things are messages for Iran. And although the United States said they have no intentions of attacking Iran directly, they're seeing if the Central Command is having these attacks in Yemen, well, they could be targeting me moving forward. Are they waiting for the defense pact to take effect with Russia, or the strategic agreement, if it's not a defense pact, so they can be in the same place or supporting each other as much as possible in case such an attack happens? Perhaps. There was an argument before that Iran delayed True Promise 2 because they had to receive certain protection or certain equipment that they needed from Russia. However, the Iranian air defense systems proved to be very effective at the time. They could potentially be doing the same thing now. However, these are messages. What Israel is doing, what the Central Command is doing in Yemen, are messages to Iran. And Iran is viewing it with very much of a cautious way. They're being very vigilant to what the United States is doing, and they know that might be coming for them. All of that could make Iran take a different path when it comes to their response. And it could be earlier than anyone is expecting, and it could come before any sort of ceasefire comes to effect inside of Gaza, although we're having these advanced talks between all sides regarding a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, another thing, by the way, Netanyahu could be doing when it comes to the attacks in Yemen, the expansion in Syria, and the threats against Iran, and potentially another strike on Iran, is to get all of these attacks done before getting into a potential settlement. Why? Because if he would want to reach a settlement, he already has something to give his population. He can tell them, well, I killed the Secretary General of Hezbollah. We targeted the Hamas main figures. We expanded in Syria, and we also destroyed the Yemeni capabilities. The only thing missing is something significant on Iran. This is something that indicates he could be having a significant attack on Iran, potentially to do with the nuclear facilities this time. However, they know that Iran has the capacity to strike back really hard. So it could be just a show of strength temporarily, or it could be just a part of the plan to expand this entity, to expand Israel, make it a greater Israel, and make it the bigger little colonial puppet for the United States' interests in the region, including oil, technology, exports, military-industrial complex too. So things are escalating very much, and judging by the level of attacks that we had from Yemen and on Yemen, there will likely be more attacks in Israel. These attacks that happened the past few days, I do not believe that they will be the only attacks. and it looks like more attacks are due to come in the following days.